The more qi you have, the stronger you are. And also our qi flows internally and also externally on the surface of our body. And that is basically immunity.
Hi, I'm Olivia Cummings, and on this podcast, I'd like to introduce you to the people who inspire me in my life and work as a jeweler, designer, and the founder of Cleopatra's Bling. Zoe Gong uses TCM, that's traditional Chinese medicine, to create incredible recipes to heal and, in the words of Bon Appetit magazine, bring about joy and connection. We spoke to her from her home in Shanghai, where she spends time researching and teaching across China. Cleopatra's Bling acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the country where we work and their continuing connections to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders and all Kulin Nations people, past, present, and future.
I'm born and raised in Shanghai. I'm in Shanghai right now. And I moved to the US when I was 16 to study. And just after 3 months after living there, I gained a lot of weight. Secondly, I started to have all different kind of health issues. I was having skin rash, I was having joint pain, and within 2 years, I developed a breast tumor. For all of a sudden, so young. So then I had to go through all the tests. I went to hospital very often during that period of my life. So it turns out it was all the food that I ate because of the drastic change of diet. And American school food is not necessarily the best food. It's very processed. And I think my body just didn't handle that very well. So after I realized that, I started to change by myself. I was reading, online, information online and stuff. And just by changing the way I ate, 70% of the symptoms just went away. And after I did the surgery for the breast tumor, the doctor was like, oh, you should pay attention to what you eat. So that's how I got into nutrition, the first step. I later, I went to NYU to study nutrition. But it's very Western, completely Western nutrition, very scientific, science-based. And then during my study, I loved it. I learned a lot, but there are a lot of unanswered questions. And I was still suffering from women's health issues, even with all the nutrition knowledge that I know. It just couldn't help me. And, you go to a hospital for women's health issues, and then all they give you is pretty much a birth control, right? So I was on birth control for, I believe, 2 to 3 years. And I'm from a very traditional Chinese family, and birth control is just not something that Chinese people like. We think, long-term it's really bad for a woman. So my mom took me to acupuncture and got me on herbs. And yeah, my issue was solved in 3 months of just doing Chinese medicine. And at the same time, I was looking into old Chinese recipe books because I was also working as a chef. I was cooking mostly, Western, Californian kind of healthy food. But I got really bored. I was like, oh my God, I cannot eat one more avocado toast. I cannot make one more acai bowls anymore. I need something, more interesting. So I started to look into those recipe books. And the first book I read, I opened it, I was like, wow, that is so incredible because even though these are recipes, the author was talking about how you should eat with the season, how you should eat for your own body, how you should plate the food in a pretty way so that you can digest it better. All these things are very advanced, right? Even when it comes to modern nutrition, it's very relevant for today too. So I thought, wow, that's so interesting. And at the same time, I was getting all the benefits from acupuncture, from herbs. And that's when I decided to study Chinese medicine.
Incredible.
And that was, I think, like 6 years ago.
So people without much contact to Chinese culture or traditional Chinese medicine specifically may be superficially familiar with the words yin and yang. That's very it's an exported concept, I suppose. However, obviously the yin and yang is very relevant to Chinese medicine. Can you maybe explain some of the misconceptions of this and how it actually is so relevant to the core principles of Chinese medicine?
Sure. I think for a regular person who might never study Chinese medicine, I think of yin and yang as opposites, right? Black and white. Some people say masculine versus feminine. But actually, in Chinese medicine, yin and yang is more flexible and fluid than just the opposites. We always say that, that's why you think of the yin yang, the Tai Chi symbol. There is aside from the half and half, there is the two rounds, two circles in each other, right? So that shows there is yin in yang, there's yang in yin. They really exist. They're dependent on each other to exist. Because you think about it, if it's only yang, then everything is yang, then if there's no yin, nothing is yang. It's a relevant kind of concept. So that's something that people need to understand. And second, it's always moving. It's not just like a direct half. It's like a wavy, right? In the center is a wavy kind of line. It means they're constantly changing, just like the moon, just like our body. So it's basically a concept that also reminds us that our body is changing and we should be more fluid, more flexible when it comes to how we think, how we eat, how we take care of the body. And yin and yang applies to Chinese medicine a lot. So they can imply certain symptoms or your body constitution. So for example, there are 9 body constitutions and 2 of them is related to yin and yang. They're yin deficiency and yang deficiency. So let's say this is very important because you can kind of say, you're a more cold person or you're a more hot person. I don't know if you've heard that.
Very much so. I'm usually cold. Now that I'm pregnant, I'm very warm.
Oh, I see.
So,
again, right, you really, really change. So if you can figure out if you're yin or yang, then you will know what kind of food that you should be eating. If you're more yin, you eat more yang foods. If you're more yang, you can have a little bit more yin foods. And that's why during pregnancy, women tend to have a little bit more yin deficiency symptoms.
And I guess parts of the body are treated differently and more central to diagnosis in Chinese medicine versus Western medicine. For example, the tongue, or in my case, spleen channel during pregnancy and kidney channel. Can you tell us how Chinese medicine views the parts of the body and how they're sometimes overlooked by Western doctors?
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms of diagnostic tools, the two medicine are, quite different. In Chinese medicine, as you said, we work with the meridians. They are named after an organ, like the spleen and kidney you just mentioned, but they mean much more than just the organ. So let's say the kidney meridian, right, it runs kind of throughout the body. There are kidney shoe on the back also. So it's a more holistic way of viewing our system, which I think totally makes sense. And also you mentioned the tongue. So a lot of the diagnostic tools in Chinese medicine is very qualitative. But in Western medicine, it's all quantitative, right? It's all about the numbers, the blood test, how much is in, how much vitamins you have in the body. But in Chinese medicine, you look at the tongue, your eyes, your energy, just how you present yourself, all these things. And we view the body as a holistic entity rather than the separate numbers kind of across the body. Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe a little bit more of an esoteric, intuitive approach, which I think is so counter-cultural in the West, where we like to have everything documented and proven. So maybe, a lot of people have said, because I get weekly acupuncture, and a lot of people have asked me if it works. And I'm like, it's the oldest system health system in the world, of course it works.
Yeah, and because, we are taught that science has to be how biomedical science is, right? We forgot what scientific language actually mean. Chinese medicine just have a different set of scientific language. And actually nowadays, a lot of studies have been done, research, like tons of them, for Chinese medicine to kind of translate Chinese medicine scientific language to the scientific language that we are familiar with. So I always just send the studies to the people who cannot understand Chinese medicine or believe it. You can see it, in another language for you to understand. And I think in China now, the hospitals, Chinese medicine hospitals, also take, I guess, the best hospitals have Chinese medicine departments and Western medicine departments, and they do communicate with each other. So let's say a Chinese medicine doctor will receive a blood test. They can take a look and as a reference for their diagnosis.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so interesting. So on the topic of the 5 elements in Chinese medicine, can you just outline them for the listeners?
Sure, yeah. I would encourage everybody who's listening to think of a circle. And kind of on top of it, you would put fire. That's the fire element. It means the summer, the color is red. And then and the organs, that's related to this element is heart and small intestine. And then you will go to clockwise. The second point would be the earth element. That is late summer. That's the 5th season in Chinese medicine. This is kind of like right now, actually. August, the hottest days of the year. And the organs are spleen and stomach. The color is earthy colors, yellow, dark yellow, kind of clay color. And then you go kind of clockwise a little bit more, you will be at the metal element. The color is white or silver, kind of metal-y color. And the organs are long and large intestines. And then you go again to the bottom kind of the circle. That will be the water element. The color is blue. Sometimes people put black as well. That is the kidney and bladder meridian. And then you go up a little to spring. That will be the wood element. The color is green. It's about liver and gallbladder. And then you will go back to fire. So that's the 5 element generating cycle. It's so interesting in the base of Chinese medicine because it tells you again how our body is changing and how our body is changing with the environment and how the organs kind of work with each other. And 5 elements is actually a bad translation, I think, because in Chinese we call this 五行. 五 is 5, but 行 is not element. 行 is a movement. Xing, let's say walking. Xing has different meanings, but it's like walking. It's kind of like interacting with each other. So the 5 elements, the concept is a moving concept. It's not just these 5 things just there. It's about how they interact with each other. And aside from the circle that you just draw, I also invite you to think of a star now. So you will go from the fire, draw a line to metal, and then metal to wood, wood to earth, earth to water, and water goes back to fire. The little star in the center. And that is the counteracting cycle of 5 elements. So such an element can kind of stop the other one. For example, when we do a fire to metal, does it make sense? Fire can burn metal, right? And then metal can cut into the wood. So you also know that. So sometimes, let's say when your fire element, your heart element, or your heart, is there some issue, something is wrong? There could be many reasons. Remember what is before heart, before fire? Wood, right? So if your fire is not enough, maybe it's because your wood has issue. You don't have wood, then the fire is not burning, right? If you follow the kind of growing cycle, for following the little circle on the outside. But if you follow the star on the inside, it could be, let me think, yeah, it could be water that's too strong, that's covering the fire, right? So now you know, oh, maybe I should actually look into my kidney side of things. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's very deep. It's a very big topic.
Like for you as a TCM practitioner and somebody constantly learning, do you find that you have to, reference very old Chinese textbooks? Do you find that's the best way to get your information, or how do you resource yourself?
Yeah, maybe because I'm from a nutrition, like Western medicine background, I don't find the old text to be the most helpful. I think reading them is great. It gives you kind of building up your philosophical idea of what Chinese medicine is. But in terms of practicing and in terms of applying it to modern day life, I don't think they're the most efficient tool. I like to combine them with the research nowadays that's behind Chinese medicine. And those really make a lot of sense. And there are a lot of papers that are really well written, and the concept that they are studying kind of comes from those old texts, but they take, the good parts and actually apply it to a clinical setting and to a modern setting. And that I think is the most useful for me as a practitioner. But the old text, I think, is very, very charming. Again, it's very philosophical. It takes a longer time actually to digest than the papers. You really need to think of it. Yeah,
I imagine it's similar in Ayurvedic texts from ancient India. They're very they're written in Sanskrit and they're quite hard to follow. But it also reminds me about because obviously I'm focusing on postpartum care now, and they talk about in Chinese medicine the golden month, as you would know. So the month after you give birth. And one of the interesting things that is traditionally done, as you would know, in Chinese medicine is that the woman shouldn't have showers. She's sponge cleaned by the women who are looking after her. Obviously these days it's hard to not shower for a month because in modern day life, who's going to sponge you clean?
Yeah, exactly.
Every day.
Exactly.
But even just the concept of knowing, okay, I should avoid cleaning my hair too much and getting a cold head during that time because I'm more open to pathogens. Even that knowledge, the base knowledge, is so helpful for me.
Yeah, totally.
In this time, without asking my mum to clean me every day with a sponge.
Yeah, totally. You can't follow the old text, line by line. Then I don't think it's necessary anymore for now.
Yeah. So do you find that Chinese medicine is woven into daily life in China in a similar way that, in Australia, for example, if you have a headache, most people take a paracetamol. Is it sort of like, would your go-to in China be like a Chinese medicine solution above a paracetamol, or what sort of how woven into your life is TCM?
Totally. And I'm trying to think as someone, who has never studied it. Like my friends, So from what I see, Chinese medicine still definitely is a huge part here in China. Even when nowadays young people, the majority have no clue exactly what it is or exactly what this herb is, but everybody uses it, whether it's in food. It's in a lot of bubble tea shops, it's all Chinese medicine ingredients in there, which is shocking. And you go to a convenience store, you can buy cold brewed ginseng drink right there. Those kind of things. First, it's very accessible, I should say. And secondly, going back to the medicine, right? If you have a symptom, you go to the pharmacy, the majority of the pharmacy have a huge Chinese medicine part. And the thing is, in China, a lot of we don't do Chinese medicine in the old way that much anymore. Like the bitter decoctions, no, it's all made into pill forms. So just like when you are taking Western medicine, and most people will still choose the more natural way of healing. Yeah.
It's so good though.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah, it makes me want to learn Mandarin, and then I can just...
I know.
It's lots to learn. What are some of the ways of working with the idea of qi in TCM? Because that's such a big topic and everyone talks about qi. How would you describe it?
So qi usually is translated into energy or life force, but from just the word qi, it actually means gas in Chinese medicine. Oh no, in Chinese language. So let's say air is yang qi. Air is 空气, oxygen is 氧气. All the gas is basically qi. Now that you know that, you kind of have a different feeling of qi, isn't it? You breathe in, you can breathe in qi, kind of, and you have this kind of special gas and / energy running through your body. And the more qi you have, the stronger you are. And also our qi flows internally and also externally on the surface of our body. And that is basically immunity. You can even think of you can think of Kung Fu. Just think about that, like a Kung Fu master. He comes to you, you can already feel his energy. And that's because he has a very strong defense qi on the surface of his body. And that's why if you see a lot of Kung Fu masters, Qigong masters, they don't need to wear a lot of clothes in cold weather because they have such a strong qi. They don't feel cold, which is incredible. But for us, normal people, how to have more qi? There are a couple ways. First, 70% of all of our qi actually comes from what we eat and drink. So that's why diet is so important. You want to have food that have good qi, meaning foods are grown naturally under the sun, happy, not a lot of pesticides, just organic, very happy produce. So important. Second, whole foods, roots, vegetable, plants, all these non-processed foods just have better qi. Think about something that's grown in the soil versus something that's made in a factory. Which one has better qi? It's very intuitive. So you're going to choose that group, right? And a variety of them, different colors, so get more well-rounded qi. Rather than just like if you only eat, I find that very common in America, where people eat 5 kinds of vegetables for a whole year sometimes. They just keep buying the same thing. Carrots, cauliflower, green beans, and call it a day. And that is not enough. You need to have a variety of things. And in China, in our dietary guidelines, it's 20 kinds of fruits and vegetables a week. If you can match that. And when you think about it, it's actually not that crazy, right? 20
It's not a lot for a week.
It's not a lot. If you can, exactly. So if you can really do that, you will really feel a difference. So that's the first thing, it comes from food and drink. And second is that the other 30%, part of it really comes from genetics. Some people are just born with weaker qi. So if you are that kind of person, to work a little harder, your life needs to be a little slower. You need to take your time and try to, use food or use whatever exercising to boost the qi. And so the other 30% is lifestyle / genetics. Let's take out genetics because it's hard to change. But for lifestyle, you can be outside a little bit more, especially when the weather is good. Be with the nature, exercise, stretch. These all help your qi to flow better and help your body to generate qi. Especially sun. Think about vitamin D. When you're in the sun, in Western medicine, you'll say, oh, you're getting vitamin D. But in Chinese medicine, you're getting the qi from the sun. So you feel happier, right? So your body is generating qi for you. Yeah. Very easy. It's not really, you don't have to take crazy supplements.
It's actually just sort of pre-industrialization living, sort of when everything was...
actually... Yeah.
It's like when everything wasn't just done in a factory and made out of season. Also, another thing I love about Chinese medicine is how emotions are addressed as part of the sessions. So, for example, my father, when he passed away last year, I had my lung my lung channel, which is the grief channel, got so much attention during TCM sessions. So I got a lot of acupuncture. And then ever since pregnancy, it's like usually I'm very liver and kidney. But now I've had just like a different array of things come up because my body fluctuates and emotions fluctuate. But I've always thought that was so nice that they address, they'll ask you how you're feeling alongside your symptoms, physical symptoms.
Yeah, that's why I love Chinese medicine as well. Emotion has never been, it's always talked together as part of the health. From even in the really, really old texts, emotion is part of it. And we were talking about the 5 seasons, and there are 5 emotions attaching to each of the elements as well. And the thing I feel the most is when I was studying nutrition, right? Emotion back then, it was maybe 10 years ago. So the gut brain connection hasn't been talked about a lot yet. So we never talk about emotion with food. The most we talk about is maybe eating disorders, but we don't talk about emotions enough. And how nutrition can get really restrictive, certain diets and things like that. So I did feel that was lacking, in my education. And when it goes to Chinese medicine, when you open the textbook, the Chinese textbook for food therapy, on the first page, they talk about how important it is that you as a practitioner needs to make sure your patients are eating foods that make them happy. That's the first thing. They tell you shouldn't prescribe food that looks terrible. You need to prescribe food that looks great, different colors, so your patients can be happy to eat them. And you should try to modify unhealthy things into a little healthier, alternatives, but still make sure your patients enjoy the experience of eating. You see such difference of teaching nutrition, right? I think that's hugely important. A lot of things, I think in Western medicine, we're still trying to figure out the role of our brain, of emotions. And that does so much. Sometimes, we've heard of crazy stories, miracle stories of our brain doing something that completely heals the physical. And that is what emotion can do too. It can really make you have digestive issues, and it can really heal part of your physical symptoms.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, again, because I know a little bit about, I grew up a lot with Ayurvedic medicine as well. And one of the texts I read, and it said, if you have a cold, eat what your mother would have cooked you when you were little that made you feel better, because it makes you feel better. It's like a comfort. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Because when you're sick, what do you feel like? You feel like something your mum made you when you were young.
Yeah.
And then you
definitely
feel better. So, I find all of those concepts super interesting. And also, again, quite logical. Like, it makes sense.
Quite logical and so easy. And what's funny is people nowadays think sometimes something is very logical and easy. People will say, oh, that is not true. It can't be that easy, right? Yeah. We're taught to like believe in very complicated things, and only those things can work. And that is not, I don't necessarily agree with that, right?
It's also nice to believe, I think. It's nice to believe. So how does your culinary practice as a chef integrate with your process as a health worker? Do you find you ever have any clashes with American lifestyle and your Chinese heritage?
I think so. I started my culinary work as a Western cuisine chef because all my teachers, I was living in the States, and all my teachers are, Western chefs. So I learned that. And again, I was getting bored because I feel like I needed more variety. I wanted to, and I started to look into Chinese medicine. So I was tired of all the salads, all the cold things. And I want to have more, brothy things or ingredients like herbs and to be used in food. So I will say cooking wise, Western and Chinese is quite different, but there are also a lot of similarities. Let's say, in terms of modern day Western cuisine, it's hard to define because Western is also a huge umbrella, right? What they eat in Greece is very different from what they eat in New York, in America, but both are West. So it's hard to say. But I want to say, in terms of Chinese cuisine, I wanted to do it because people have so much misunderstanding around it. Chinese food is very regional. China is huge. And it's huge in a way that the geography is very different in each region. So let's say you think of Chinese food, some people think of dim sum, some people think of dumplings. But these foods, I'm a Shanghainese, they are not my food. I go to a dim sum restaurant is the same as if I go to a taco restaurant. Because dim sum is from
so
Canton, from Hong Kong. It's not something I would eat at all on a daily basis, right? So I think in terms of my culinary work, I want people to understand, aside from making medicinal food, adding herbs to foods, I also want people to appreciate that different regions of China does eat different food. And we eat very seasonally. That is something that's lacking in generic American cuisine, I would say, right? It kind of every region seems to have similar food, and the produce. If you don't go to farm to table restaurants, you eat the same. It can be the same thing every year. So that's something I want to remind people with my work. In terms of lifestyle, completely different. American lifestyle and Chinese is completely different. I definitely had culture shock when I went there. And the Chinese lifestyle, I would say, is for me, it is better. It's better for my health. It's slower, definitely. And there's a lot of conversations around health. Because the interesting thing is a lot of Chinese medicine terms are just regular language.
Yeah.
It's in regular language.
I think
Liver
it's
fire.
integrated, I think.
Yeah, it's very integrated.
I love that about your book as well. It's so accessible. For example, in Australia, obviously, we have a big Chinese community. So I can find all these ingredients, but I don't necessarily know how to mix them. So, having for example, your chicken bone broth, which looks insane, by the way, very delicious, with the jujube and everything. And, in, the introduction, how you talk about what it's good for, seasonality, energetics, meridian affinity, functions. It's great for anyone who has an interest in this without necessarily knowing where to look. So, yeah, it's great. Your book's amazing.
Yeah, that's my goal, because people often think, it's so hard to start Chinese medicine. I don't know anything about it. The herbs are so hard to find. It's not necessarily the case. I was in Bosnia. Who knew I could find all the herbs that I needed? It's if you really just ask around, it's very, very easy. And a lot of the herbs are common foods. You see cinnamon, you see ginger, you see honey, and it's more just about knowing a little bit the basics of the concept. That's why the first part of my book, I decided to start with information. Because only when after you understand, then you know, it's actually, very intuitive, and I have a lot of things around me that can help me to get into Chinese medicine.
Definitely. Do you have a particular case? Can you give us an example of even in your own personal experience or somebody that you've worked with where Chinese medicine was particularly effective? Or I have a million examples of myself, but I'm curious about something you can share.
Yeah, I have so many. Maybe just a recent example. I was talking about the 5th season when we did the 5 elements. And right now it's late season. And during this season in China, we do something called 冬病夏治. So basically prevent winter illnesses during the summer with certain Chinese medicine modalities. And the top one is called 三伏贴. It's an herbal paste that hospitals make, and then they will stick on you on certain acupressure points on the body twice a week for 3 weeks during the hottest days in the summer, which is right now. And then to prevent winter illnesses, especially respiratory situations, chronic coughing, asthma, low immunity. So if you always get sick during the fall, your seasonal flus and things like that, definitely people would go for this treatment. So I went because I do have some chronic throat issues because I talk a lot. And sometimes I have like sore throat very, very often. I really hate it. So I went. When I went there, there's a lot of people to do this treatment. And after they stuck it on, you have to go under a machine for them to heat it up a little bit. So when I was there, it's all grandmas near me, right? And I was talking to a lot of them. And one of them told me, oh, I've been doing this for the past 7 years. I have very severe asthma, but after I start doing this, my asthma just hasn't happened in winter. So I keep coming back every year. It has been 7 years. And another grandma told me a different story. She said, oh, this helped me a lot with my cough, but this Chinese medicine hospital really saved the life of my daughter. When she was born, she had a very severe issue, but just with Chinese medicine, they cured it. It was something that's related to her neck and her chin that I think that's not positioned right. And she went to Western doctors, and all they wanted to do is do a surgery to cut the tendon so that to like move her head to the right position, but she didn't want to do that. So she went to Chinese doctors, and then they use these herbal patches, they use these little massage techniques, and it just went back to normal in like 2 treatments. So she's like, I'm so thankful for them, because otherwise her daughter would be, have this kind of situation all her life. And surgeries has a lot of complications, and it's not going to, really, really heal from within. So yeah, so many examples that Chinese people, the elderlies, they really believe in Chinese medicine because they benefited from it a lot.
So incredible. It's on my radar at the moment, but postpartum care in China, it's superior to Western postpartum care, which is essentially non-existent unless you pay a lot of money. I'm also curious about the birth space in the hospitals, because in Australia we've reached 45% cesarean.
Oh, really?
Which is incredibly high. The World Health Organization says no country should be above 15%.
Why is Australia so high?
I had a class yesterday and they spoke about it, and they talk about the cascade of interventions. So the minute you start intervening with synthetic oxytocin and all the hormones that we produce naturally, it represses your natural oxytocin. Also, your heart rate drops, which means your baby's heart rate drops. So it just, essentially, it's like a dominoes effect, it's sort of one thing turns into the next. But I'm curious because obviously it's so high in Australia, and I really don't want that for my birth. But also I'm just curious about Chinese birth space. Maybe this is a conversation for another time, but I'm curious just if you can give us an overview even of how women are treated in hospital in the birthing space.
Yeah, first of all, I will say I'm not an expert.
Of course, yeah.
In that, because I haven't, I'm not even married yet.
Yeah.
But from what I see and hear, definitely, I think Chinese hospital put women, like pregnant women, in a very important, like cared position. If you're pregnant, just in a family, if you're pregnant, you're the queen. Everybody serves you. So you're very important. And in a hospital, there are a lot of great hospitals, and even the postpartum care centers, a lot of them take care of the birth part as well.
You've posted about them, and they look like little heavens on earth.
Oh my gosh, there are a lot of them. The best ones are so great. They're not cheap, so you will spend at least $15,000 for the 40 days.
Here. Right.
Oh, I see. But it's like everything you ever need, all the meals and all the massages, even the birth. So some women move in couple weeks before their birth. So make sure when they need, there are doctors, they will arrange everything for them. And they usually have the choice of going to C-section or natural birth. But I don't know the details of in terms of the statistics.
I'll Google it.
People, yeah, I'm not sure.
It's so interesting because I know in Korea there's great postpartum care as well.
Oh yeah, Korea as well, for sure. I've also saw the videos. I was like, yeah, that's so great.
Looks amazing.
In China too, the thing is, right, in China, you will have a nanny. That's for you. That's included in the price. They'll take care of the baby 24/7. The nanny room is in the baby room, and then all the diapers are free, and you get Chinese medicine treatments. You get meals designed to help you recover, and you get a lot of classes, workshops to teach you how to how to breastfeed the baby better, how to like lose the excess weight if you have, all those type of things. Yeah.
Is TCM in China considered as important as Western hospital care? Is it sort of on the same level and it's still accredited in the same way? Or is it just integrated into one care system?
So in China, we have separate Chinese medicine hospitals, separate Western hospitals, and a lot of hospitals have both compartments that you can see at the same time. And doctors might refer you to each other. But in terms of people, right, I think a lot of people still believe in Chinese medicine. We all understand that it is a great preventative, more natural way of healing. But there's a lot also, especially young people, a lot of young people who don't understand Chinese medicine and don't believe it as much as, our grandparents or our parents. But then I think it's still very highly regarded in China. And it's evident because it's everywhere, right? If people don't believe it, there wouldn't be so many clinics, so many TCM products out there.
Yeah. I think it's done the test of time to prove that it works. How many thousands of years. So what would be your advice to someone who is considering Chinese medicine for the first time and is maybe scared of acupuncture or nervous about herbs? Because a lot of people ask me if my herbs taste bad. I honestly always like the taste of my herbs. I don't know why, but I find them satisfying. But, some people have that fear of needles. What would be your advice?
Totally. So, I always recommend people, aside from my book, to go see a Chinese medicine practitioner. In the West, it's always an acupuncturist because that's just how the tradition goes. But you can go, you don't have to do the acupuncture. You can tell them, hi, I just want a consultation. I want to know my body constitution. I want to know what you think I should do with my body. Then I think it makes total sense. They will do assessment, ask you a ton of questions. They should ask you at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes, this kind of amount of question to understand you. And then they'll tell you, oh, you have liver stagnation, or you have a blood deficiency, or you are yin deficient. Then after you have that information, it's a lot easier afterwards. You could do some research. There are certain foods that you can eat. There are certain modalities, let's say moxa, let's say massage, that doesn't involve a needle, but could help with your specific constitution, right? Then you have a direction. Otherwise, you don't know what you are, and there's so many options in terms of food modalities. You might know what to choose. So I think it's very important. Just go, and you only need to see them once. Get an answer, and then start to work. And I would say the easiest way is massage. You can just use your hand, understand some acupressure points and general body areas. You can do it daily, zero cost. And then you can use some food herbs. So there are 2,000-3,000 different herbs in Chinese medicine, and around 120-150 of them are food herbs. So they're safe to consume daily, and also just for you to use in a kitchen. I didn't say that. The Chinese government publish a list every year for the consumers can safely to enjoy them at their home. Yeah, so you can use these, and most of them can be made into tea, and there are a lot of recipes available online on Google. So you can try those out and see. And then especially now that you know your constitution, what you need, you can look into the herbs and choose which one's the best.
When I look at your book, I really think, wow, this woman has had a lifelong experience with amazing TCM food just incorporated into her life. Did your mum cook, or your father, or anyone in your family cook like this, or did you grow up with that?
I grew up with home cooked meal. We rarely go out to eat because I grew up with my grandparents. And so my grandma is actually a nurse for a Western hospital. But, I always see them, doing their meridian massages every day. They will put herbs in food. It's just very common. But I was never formally taught about Chinese medicine, I would say. So all these things I had to learn by myself. But thankfully, I had the Western cooking kind of background. So it's easier for me to put them together. It's just intuitive for me to put it together, Western and Chinese. So yeah. And a lot of the foods are common things. For example, I have some soups or porridge or desserts. These are very, very traditional ones. But I would make sure the ingredients are more clean. Maybe rather than white rice, I could change them into a multigrain, things like that.
It's amazing. Now I'm looking at this, I'm getting hungry. And I think the next thing I'm going to make is the warm black sesame smoothie.
Oh gosh, yeah. That one's really, really nice.
So where can our listeners find you, Zoe? Obviously on your Instagram. If you want to just share your handles. And this is the cookbook. So the 5 Elements cookbook. I know you do workshops. Are you going to be continuing them in Shanghai?
Yes, I do wish to continue in Shanghai, and I'm leading more tours too. I want people to visit China. It is so great, so convenient. The air has been so much better. Water's so clean on the streets. And you can, if you really are interested in Chinese medicine, I think you should come and experience how accessible it is and how people are using it in their daily life. And you just have to do it by actually immersing yourself in the environment. There is no other way to do it. And so, I designed several tours for people to join, to try out Chinese medicine and also see China. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. We are loosening the visa policies, so it's very easy for foreigners to come now.
Great. I'll come. Is it easy to travel with a baby?
Yeah, we're very baby friendly. Another thing I've realized is there are so many babies just outside. I don't see that in New York a lot.
Interesting.
In China, there are a lot of places for kids. Every single shopping mall, there's just a kids area. You can just throw your kids there, and then you can go around.
Go for it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Zoe.
Thank you so much, Olivia.
This was the Cleopatra's Bling podcast with me, Olivia Cummings. Next time...
I think it's always a lot to deal with. I think the tactical approach, though, of imagining all of these things as interconnected, reimagining what needs to go into place of the things that have harmed us as a people, as collective people.
Until then, stay curious.